You are listening to Proof of Love with Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on Proof of Love is intended as financial advice, legal advice, therapy, or really anything other than entertainment. Please take everything that you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're hearing us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on, or of any of the sponsors or affiliate products that you may hear about on the show. Now that that's squared away, let's start the show. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. This episode of Proof of Love is brought to you by Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold hedging solution for the crypto community. One of the challenges of investing in cryptocurrencies is dealing with volatility. Keeping a diversified portfolio is a key to healthy returns. I keep about 10% of my crypto assets in gold using Vaultoro. Vaultoro allows me to open a gold wallet in seconds where I can trade easily with cryptos in gold. What I like about using Vaultoro instead of Tether is that the gold in my Vaultoro wallet is insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. Visit vaultoro.gold/Tatiana today and get zero trading fees for the first 3 months. That is vault, like a gold vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro, ole! Hey, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Proof of Love. You were probably crying last week because there was no episode, but we needed a break, even from those that we do love, and that's you, our audience. We love you guys. We've been making a lot of shows, and I don't know, we've got more excitement, more questions, more things to explore. This is your hostess with the mostest, Tatiana Moroz, and I'm joined with my two beautiful co-hostesses with the mostesses, Lauren Kasovitz.
Hello, everybody.
And Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Hey, I like how you did that tongue twister. I'm impressed. As an audiobook narrator who regularly does tongue twisters, I bow down to you, Tatiana.
We should talk one day about your audiobook.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a great show for a future topic. I'll put it on the show prep. But we also have topics that we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I suppose. Yes, we could talk about the topics that we have planned for today, I suppose, as well. Although I really do like the idea of maybe we could give away some of those audiobooks that you work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick plug. I'm not trying to self-promote too much, but if anyone ever wants any of my audiobooks for free, you can go to my website, which is smvoice.info, and then you can click on the request a free audiobook button, and then you can request a freebie of any of my titles. I have lots of books about blockchain stuff and nonfiction, also some self-help books, but the thing that you might really like is my romance books. I do a lot of lesbian romance as well as straight romance.
There you go, guys. If you want to get your erotica on, just go to Stephanie's website.
Some of these books are thinly veiled as romance when it's really more like, upscale porn.
I think that's okay. I think fancy porn like that is a lost art. Now they just get it in, they've got the money shot, and then that's it. But this is kind of building up something.
I agree. And, it's popular, right? Like a lot of people listen to romance books. It's so popular that Audible has a romance package where you can get an unlimited subscription of romance books. So they're onto something there.
Wow. I can't imagine needing a whole subscription for that, but I guess people have some time to think about romance. I don't know. Do you know who the people are? Is it just like housewives?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is, right? But some of it is people who have a job. Like, for example, if you're a truck driver, right? There are some truck drivers who listen to romance and then they just keep it going all night. Or if you have any kind of job where you're not really talking to people and you're listening to stuff, or if you have a long commute, some people commute like a couple hours a day, maybe on the train or the subway, and who knows what could be in their dirty little earbuds.
Well, it's probably you whispering sweet nothings in their ear. Before we get started on the show, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold Bitcoin exchange. They've been around forever. Josh Shigala, is my co-host on the Tatiana Show. So if you guys want to listen to us blabbing it up, you can go to thetatianashow.com. But Voltoro has been a sponsor of both the Tatiana Show and Proof of Love. So thanks, guys. Go to voltoro.com and check out their site. And yeah, I guess that's it. We have some interesting stuff to discuss today. We're talking about head games. We're talking about gaslighting, and we're talking about future faking. Oh, no, we don't like that on the Tatiana Show. And we also don't like it on Proof of Love. Anyway, Stephanie, do you want to tee this one up for us?
Yeah, sure. So gaslighting and future faking are, as you accurately described, mind games. And I think we should first start out by defining what they are. So I think most people are familiar with gaslighting, but we'll explain it too. But what is future faking for someone who doesn't know?
Well, future faking has a lot of things encompassed in it, but it's basically when somebody gives you a whole story, gives you a fairy tale, makes you feel very close, and pushes everything into the present. So you're not really getting to know each other in a normal way, hitting those key milestones. You have somebody who's making you feel like you've known them their whole life, like you have this whole big 10-year whirlwind relationship within a week of dating. So it breeds a false sense of intimacy and the feeling that you are there in this kind of fantasy relationship, which is exactly what it is, a fantasy. So they're basically faking the future that they've already had with you to either get what they want in the present or to, it's a little bit complicated, but it's really also to feed their ego, whether they consciously or subconsciously know it. It's to be that charming knight or princess in shining armor and or ball gown.
Are all people that are future faking, are they all evil, or is this sort of, because that would be, I think, a good distinction. Because I think some people, they do it just as a really hardcore manipulation. But some people, it'll be as simple as saying, oh, I can't wait till we get to go to this place together and that place together. And then all of a sudden that changes.
They are not all bad people. Like I said, a lot of it, psychologists and relationship therapists believe that a lot of it comes from insecurity and needing to feed your ego. So while there are definitely people who are manipulating, which is where gaslighting will come in, which is a very malignant form of future faking and kind of distorting reality. Future faking is really about somebody who wants to see themselves in a certain way, either to get what they want emotionally or physically. So they'll use whatever tactics they can, consciously or subconsciously, to have you fall in love with them, to have you feel like you are in this serious relationship with them in a very short period of time. There are definitely people that do it to get sex or to get something they want from you in a manipulative kind of way, thieves, robbers, whatever you want to call it. But I think the bulk of future fakers, they don't even necessarily know that they're doing it, or they're just coming from a pattern of doing it for so long because it makes them feel good to make you feel good, which sounds very counterintuitive, but at the end of the day, most of these people don't want a serious relationship. They don't want real intimacy. They want that fleeting feeling that you get from a romantic comedy. They want that immediate gratification of love, sex, whatever it may be that feeds their ego and their needs. So I think it's really interesting, all the things that fall under the umbrella of future faking. So I thought it might be helpful just to let you guys know of another term that you may have heard of that tends to fall within future faking, and it's called fast forwarding. And fast forwarding is kind of that key thing that these future fakers have in their arsenal. And it's like you meet them one day. By the second day, they're talking about you meeting their family. They're talking about having kids together. They're describing vacations that you're going to take the following month. They're introducing you to their friends. They're doing this, they're doing that, all in a way to make you feel that they're falling in love with you. They love that feeling of making you happy. It sounds really strange because at the end of the day, future faking is really dangerous and it's really emotionally manipulative. But a lot of these people that do fast forward and push that relationship forward with words and with actions aren't really always doing it to hurt you. They're doing it, it's about themselves. At the end of the day, it's about selfishness and insecurity, whether they know it or not. That's kind of the broad view, if you guys want to add on to that.
Yeah, so I have a question. How do you know if it's too fast, right? Like, Because is there some kind of a timetable? Because it is
Yes.
possible to meet someone and just feel like there's a connection, right? There's a strong connection. And, maybe you both were maybe you met on a dating site and it was like eHarmony or something. And you were both saying in your profile, well, I'd like to get married someday and have kids, and then they're talking about that within the first month. Is that normal? Is that not normal? How do you tell?
I think there are a few kind of little tests. And at the end of the day, it is a lot about your gut. If your gut is telling you this isn't right, I've been future faked more times than I can count. And the first few times I was taken in completely because I heard somebody saying they want to spend time with me in 6 months when we just met 2 days ago, or they have the same values that I have for what I want in the future. But I think it's really about hitting key milestones within a relationship, whether that happens in 2 months or 2 years. When you skip over all of those milestones and somebody who just went on a drinks date with you, maybe you kissed, maybe not, the next day is professing their undying love for you, there's a problem there. And there is such thing as love at first sight. I felt it. Steph, I believe you had some version of it. I don't want to speak
Yes.
for you, but
Yes.
and there, right. And there's also such a thing as a healthy relationship moving quickly, because that for sure happened with me. But I think it's just about keeping your eyes open and listening to their words. And like in any kind of relationship, seeing if they follow through with what they say. If somebody talks about 6 months down the road, they want you to go to this wedding with them in Hawaii, you just met 2 days ago. If they suddenly disappear after 2 weeks for 3 days, they're not taking you to the wedding in Hawaii. But if you're still talking fairly consistently and maybe a month from the time you met, they're starting to give you dates. Maybe 2 weeks after that, they're asking if you normally fly economy or first class. If a few weeks after that, they're talking about actually booking these tickets and giving you details so you can take off work or whatever, that's a great sign. If they just keep babbling on and on about it and nothing happens and there's no action taken towards this magical event in the future, whatever it may be, that's a giant red flag and warning sign. Also, I've said these words and I guarantee you guys have said it, our audience members have said it or felt it. I've had people talk to me on a second date, third date, as if I'm the one, when I do not reciprocate those feelings. And we haven't really gotten to know each other. And the dates have been fairly superficial. And they're talking about me having their babies and this, that, the other. And the thing that's just flashing in my head is, you don't even know me. You don't even know me. I haven't even let you get to know me. That, I think, is something that we tend to bypass. And we tend to be like, oh my God, he likes me. It's feeding our ego. It's feeding their ego. It's a fantasy. It's romantic. But if there's nothing to follow through and your gut is telling you, well, they're not even asking me pertinent questions about who I am or what I want. They're just kind of looking at me and painting me as this person. That's a real problem.
Yeah, I was thinking, based on what you just said, Lauren, this could backfire, right? Because if somebody is talking about a future with you, but you're like, whoa, that freaks me out. I mean, whether you have a history that makes you fearful of commitment or not, that could just freak someone out. And so what happens with that? Do they pick up on it and do they stop? Do future fakers sort of target certain people who are more susceptible to that?
I think it's really dependent on the kind of future faking that's happening. I think when you notice fast forwarding within a relationship really fast, somebody making you feel like, okay, I want to also refrain and say this first. It's not as much about you feeling this inside warm vibe that you know this person, that you connect with this person, that this is a good person and you share values. Usually future fakers and fast forwarders are manipulating you with their charm. So a lot of it tends to be very superficial. They are telling you what you want to hear. So I think it's about being careful there and really kind of listening to what they're saying versus what you've actually told them versus what they're saying without you having said anything. I also think it does tend to backfire. And when it does, that is usually when future fakers disappear. That is usually the moment that they just drop off. If they feel like you're on to them, poof, they're gone. There are so many ghosters. When you're ghosted, I would say, this is by no means a professional guesstimate. This is just in my personal experience. When you're ghosted, 90% of the time, the person has picked up on the fact that you see them and you see what they're doing. So instead of explaining it, because what are they going to explain? Oh, it felt good in the moment. I overestimated my ability to be in a relationship. I overestimated my ability to commit. Most future fakers are not really emotionally mature enough to talk to you about that. So they're just going to drop off and find their next target to feed their ego, feed their needs. And like Tatiana mentioned earlier, and I'm so sorry I'm rambling about this, but I have so many passionate feelings about this topic. There are plenty of future fakers who employ fast forwarding who are looking to just get sex. Plenty of them. Sex, making out, whatever it may be. So that's also a really interesting line to kind of look at when somebody is wooing you. Are they overly sexual? Are they talking about sex way too early in a relationship before you even know each other and you haven't brought anything up? Those are all kind of big warning signs. And if they have promised you something, whether it's a small thing like, oh, we'll go to the movies next Saturday, and then suddenly you don't hear from them for a week. There's no talk of the movies. Your date has the date of going to the movies has passed, and they reach out to you like nothing happened, or it's usually that nothing happened, like they didn't promise you anything, and you call them on it. There's a high likelihood they're going to just completely drop off and you are not going to hear from this person again.
Is this a narcissist thing? Because it sounds like it is. When you're saying that they do this to feed their ego or they do this to get sex, this really smacks of narcissism. And if you're not familiar with this, right, there's been a lot of discussion about this. This is like a hot topic on the internet these days. The idea is that, especially within dating contexts, you often come across people who have a set of traits or behaviors that are basically like, you know, feeding their own ego. These are people who at first seem very charming, and then they kind of trap you, and then they're sucking you dry. They're taking your energy, resources, finances, sex, whatever. They're lying to you. You find out later that they start to ramp up the poor treatment once they're actually locked into a relationship with you, and they're doing it all to feed their ego and to get what's called supply, narcissistic supply, which could be attention, could be sex, could be money, could be status. They could be using you to basically charm other people, leeching off of your reputation. So that's a brief introduction. You can Google it if you want to know more about narcissists, but this sounds like a narcissist thing. Is it, Lauren?
I think it can be. I don't think it's exclusively a narcissist thing, but I think narcissists definitely tend to employ fast forwarding and future faking. I also think correct me if I'm wrong here, because I definitely don't know as much about this, but I think with narcissists, there's that also deep underlying sense of not feeling good enough, which is ironic, and having a deep rooted sense of insecurity. That's what I've read before, and that's a huge part of future faking as well, is they love how they look when they're wooing and whining and dining you. They love how they look to you. They love how they look to themselves. They're creating the fantasy for themselves just as much as they are for you. So with the exception of con artists or people that are just, looking to just get sex, but even that in some cases too. So yes, I would say narcissism definitely is a huge contributing factor to future faking, fast forwarding, all of it for sure, 100%. Do you guys want to share any of your experiences or red flags you maybe have seen in the past when dealing with future fakers, maybe to help our audience?
I was hoping Tatiana would want to weigh in. I saw her on mute.
Well, really what I wanted to talk about was gaslighting. I'm not sure I have a particular story about narcissists. I mean, you could basically take any guy I've dated and pretty much put that on them. Not totally, but I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm susceptible to narcissists or charming people or emotionally unavailable people. I think I've improved. Total psychos are not getting past me anymore. So that's good.
I think you have. Yeah, you have. I've seen your dating history.
I would say that actually like the past 4 or 5 dudes I've dated are not raging narcissists. All right, maybe like 2 or 3. But still, that's an improvement.
It is. It is.
I've been reading a lot about narcissists and sociopaths recently. And, I look at that and I see some traits of some of my ex-partners in the descriptions. And I think it can be helpful maybe to at least think of it as like maybe a spectrum or something like that. Some people have certain traits. And if you haven't seen these before, you can read about them in a book, and then you can be better prepared for when you encounter them in the wild. The theory I like best is that this is like an adaptation, right? Like humans are an altruistic society. We cooperate, we share resources. And if you look at animals like ants or bats or anything else that's altruistic, anytime you have an altruistic social group of animals, you always have cheaters who are trying to game the system and basically get benefits for free without putting in any work or contributing. And
Commies.
well, I guess they're nature's commies, yeah, or something. And there's like an arms race between so-called social people and so-called sociopathic people or cheaters, right? And they're always trying to sort of outmaneuver each other. And humans evolved this very complex social behavior, and we're very good at detecting fakes and cheaters, usually, because of this arms race that has been going on for so many years. And where I was reading about this is a book called, I think it's called The Psychopath Code or The Sociopath Code by Peter Hitchens, and you can read it online for free. I can send a link to it in the show notes. But what I wanted to say about this was that I think there can be this tendency, like when there's so many books like The Sociopath Next Door, right? We were talking about this book privately in our group chat, and there's so many resources out there that say basically like almost everyone could be a psychopath or a narcissist, right? They could be this really dangerous person. It's appealing to some people because they've been hurt. They've been screwed. Sometimes they've had their lives ruined by their ex-husband or something who really seems like he could have the traits of a narcissist or sociopath that they're describing, right? And so it's kind of tempting to say sometimes that anyone I don't like is a narcissist, right? And that's the danger that I see in it.
But we do have epidemics of narcissism at this point. Don't you think so? Like, I mean, look at all the idiots on Instagram. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, is that actually the same thing as like a clinical psychopath, right? Maybe it lies somewhere on the same spectrum, right? Or maybe it can be an indicator, right? Because the people who are real narcissists or sociopaths, they need something to feed their ego. So they are going to be posting those thirst trap selfies on Instagram. But not everybody who posts a thirst trap selfie is a narcissist necessarily, So
That's true. I'm just saying, like, our whole society is very, I don't know, like our interactions on social media, I think are not based in reality. And I think that the whole objective is to sort of front. And I think that lends itself to that kind of culture.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And I think it is helpful to read about narcissists and sociopaths because it at least gives you a model or a framework to understand the behavior of some people, especially if you're not a narcissist yourself and you don't have any experience with this, right? Or if you've never encountered one before. This is helpful as a model to understand the behavior of certain people and protect yourself from it. But it also doesn't mean that everyone you don't like is a narcissist or a sociopath, right?
That's true. Although I will say, sort of what prompted this, and, we've got the whole gaslighting thing, is TatianaWasRight.com, a website that I still need to build. But I mean, it's kind of the joke is that I'm always right about a lot of these people and a lot of these scams. But what's interesting is the lack of self-trust and, knowing when your gut is telling you something real and knowing when you just have indigestion. I think that when you're dealing with these kinds of people, they make you doubt your ability to gauge whether or not something is okay. Like I in my 20s, I went out with this really crazy person. All my friends know him as like my craziest ex or whatever. And he did a lot of gaslighting and I just didn't really know which way was up. And then later on, when I would approach different relationships, I would see things through the prism of that previous trauma and just think that necessities or requests that I had were outlandish when in reality they were perfectly normal. But because that person had sort of made me distrust my own lying eyes, I couldn't really implement healthy boundaries. And I thought that it was my fault. So it wasn't even just that you believe the lies that that person tells you. It's also that you believe that you're incapable of gauging what's happening. And I think that that's sort of like a sneaky detrimental result from that kind of interaction.
That's a great lead into the topic of gaslighting because that sounds like exactly what you just described, Tatiana.
Yes.
Who wants to explain gaslighting?
I can go for it. I mean,
Okay,
technically.
talk about the movie too, because I think the movie thing is kind of interesting.
Oh, yes. Well, first, gaslighting, according to its formal definition, is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person seeks to sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or in members of a targeted group, making them question their own memory, perception, and sanity. And the term comes from a movie where there is a couple and the husband is trying to get something that she has. I believe they are jewels of her aunts. And instead of just outwardly stealing them, he seeks to make her go, quote unquote, crazy. And he starts doing little things around their house to make her question her own sanity. Like, for example, she will turn the gaslight all the way up before she goes into another room. When she returns to the room, the gaslight has been turned halfway down. She knows she didn't do it. She asks him if he did it. He says, no, it was always halfway down. Little things like that kind of just pick at her. The idea is to get her institutionalized as somebody with, somebody who's insane with a mental illness so that he can steal this fortune that she has. So that's what the movie is about. And the term became so popular because people employ gaslighting all the time. It's a huge tactic of narcissists. And the idea is to control you in some way. So they say that a lot of cult leaders and dictators tend to employ gaslighting, and it does convince people that whatever they may be thinking intuitively or whatever they may know in their core is true is not true. And like Tatiana said, she didn't know which way was up. I've experienced that as well. And that's really the biggest thing with gaslighting. You get very confused. You start to wonder if you are losing your mind. And then subsequently, you begin to depend on this person who is gaslighting you for the truth, which is not the truth at all. It's the truth as they want you to see it.
Oftentimes they'll isolate you from your friends and family before they start really kind of changing up the playbook in terms of what happened, what didn't happen, and kind of change history.
Yeah, because your friends and family can provide a reality check of what's actually real.
Exactly. But that's also why it is generally easier. You see people joining a cult or following under dictatorships who don't have those strong family, ties and connections, because it's easier for them to isolate them. It's also a huge tactic of not just narcissists and bigger, scarier people, but just kind of everyday abusers. It's an easy way to isolate your target, get them to kind of believe what you think wholeheartedly and question themselves constantly.
This is why sometimes people have to go no contact with a family member, because that's probably one of the hardest things to break away from. If your mother or your father are gaslighting you your whole life, that really changes your whole ability to perceive what's going on. So it's not even just somebody that you're dating. Like some might say that my mother displays some narcissistic tendencies. And I wonder if that's not a pattern that I'm already familiar with and why that becomes replicated. But gaslighting can happen anywhere, and all that stuff can be a little bit hard to detangle, especially when you have it like on multiple generation levels.
Yeah, agreed. And I think gaslighting is incredibly dangerous and harmful, not only emotionally, but physically. I know I was gaslit a few years ago, and it drove me to therapy. I went to therapy. And when I sat down on the seat, I literally said to her, okay, this is what's happening in my life right now. Am I crazy? And I had talked to friends about it, and they were like, no, of course you're not crazy. He's crazy. But it took me going to a professional to look at me and say, you're a victim of gaslighting. This is what's actually happening. And it was, I saw her for just a couple of months. It was for that specific incident. So like Tatiana was saying, I can't even fathom the detrimental effects of gaslighting on somebody who's grown up with it, who's dealt with it for years. I dealt with it for less than a month, and I went to therapy because I thought I was losing my mind. It's really, really scary. So what do we think are some signs of gaslighting that we can maybe tell our audience about to keep a lookout on what's going on in their own relationship, their own lives, and not just relationship romantic, but with family members, friends, coworkers, bosses?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that story, Lauren. I mean, I think everyone can relate because we've all kind of experienced this. at some point or another. I would say like one of the biggest signs is that it starts small and then it ramps up, right? Because every piece of gaslighting is a test. And, the person who's doing it sometimes doesn't even do it consciously. They're just, this is how they operate, right? And they start small because they have to slowly undermine your sense of reality, right? And just like future faking, this could probably be the same thing, where faking might start small and then ramp up. Although maybe it's hard to imagine it starting small because it's kind of like a grand gesture, but I think it also would ramp up. And I would say the biggest sign is like when you start to doubt your own sense of reality or you stop trusting yourself, right? And that can be really hard if you don't have a lot of self-trust to begin with because your parents didn't encourage it, or you've had a lot of experiences that shook your foundation of reality or anything like that. But when you get that feeling like I can't trust myself or what my gut is telling me, when you start to second guess yourself, right? When you have a gut feeling and then you start to not dismiss it or not pay attention to it, that I would say is a red flag that maybe you're experiencing something like this.
And I'm not sure what professionals would say. I know the professional I went to, she said, get out. That was her immediate reaction. It was get out. Don't try to talk to him about it. You've already tried to talk about it. Just leave. I think in my situation and probably many others, if you are being gaslit or you're dealing with somebody who's narcissistic, I think the best thing is probably if you've tried to talk to them about it and you're not getting anywhere and it's just making you feel worse and more confused, more doubtful, more unsure of what's really happening in your situation. It's hard, especially when you're being manipulated. I would never pretend to say it's easy, but you probably just need to walk. Just show them the door, show yourself the door, get help, talk to your friends, just find a healthier situation.
That is really hard because if you're in a relationship like that, especially if you're deep within a relationship, like you're married or you have kids together or something like that, if you have anything that's tying you together and maybe you've been experiencing this for years, it's so hard to detach yourself from that person. And people who do this, they create a bond with their target, and that makes it really hard to just walk away. And a lot of people say that, right? When somebody's in a relationship that looks like it's abusive or it's with a narcissist or that they're being gaslit or their sense of reality is being played with, everybody says, well, why don't they just leave, right? But it's not that simple as just leave because you're bonded to that person and because they've maybe been playing this game for years. And so it can be really hard to get out.
Is there sympathy for the gaslighter or for the narcissist available, or no, we're just neutering them going forward? I mean, maybe they're just trying to grow. Her inside.
I would say for gaslighters, no. I think there's nothing redeemable about somebody who's gaslighting you. They are 100% doing it to hurt you and to put you in a space where they want you to be. It's just, I don't think there is any way that you can kind of, I don't know, maybe you can relate to a gaslighter, not you, but people can relate to it. But I think it's just unbelievably damaging emotionally. And there's nothing I can say that's nice about it. If we go back to future faking and potential narcissists, there might be a little bit of sympathy, which is a lot coming from me because God, I've dealt with it so much. But even then, it's just, oh, gosh, I don't know if sympathy is something I can feel for them. Pity, maybe. I know that sounds harsh, but pity.
Can they be redeemed though? I mean, are they just doomed? We talked a little bit about this with Natalie about our narcissists, and they're more advanced versions, I guess, of sociopaths and psychopaths. Like, I don't know, is there anything redeemable about them? Like, can they be self-aware? I don't know. Have you ever thought to yourself, am I a narcissist? But they say that you're not, because if you're not a narcissist, then, or if you were a narcissist, you would never consider that you are one.
Right.
So I don't know.
I would like to answer the question about can we have sympathy for them? I would say the way I've been looking at it after doing a little bit more research is like compassionate self-defense. And what I mean by that is I could say that these people, like, it doesn't really help to think of these people as they're evil or they're broken or something like that. A lot of them, what they're doing, it's not conscious. They're not really doing it on purpose. This is just how they are. This is just how they operate. And realizing that, but also saying, this is how they are, but I'm not going to expose myself to it because it could be harmful for me. I'm going to put distance between myself and this person. I'm going to create boundaries so that they can't hurt me, right? But this is just something that they do. It's kind of like not good or evil. It's like just, this is just the way that they are, right? And so I have to part of taking care of myself is recognizing people who could be dangerous in this way and then getting away from them. And there's a lot of discussion about, like, can a narcissist ever change, right? Can they ever be redeemed? And the answer that everybody comes to seems to be no. And I think that's good to accept that, right? Because if you deem someone as, they're dangerous and they're not showing any interest in changing and they're not really able to change because this is just the way they are, then the only thing left to do is just get yourself away from them, right? Identify them and then create distance and boundaries.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a really kind of empathetic way of looking at it too. And I appreciate that perspective also. I also think there's a big difference between different kinds of people that employ these tactics, because there are psychopaths and there are people who have, I think it's psychopaths or the antisocial personality disorder. I think that's what they're calling it now. But there is a big difference between somebody who's a sociopath versus a psychopath. They do say that somebody who has psychopathy tends to not feel any type of empathy. It's just not there. It doesn't exist. But somebody who has more sociopathic tendencies, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might be mixing up the terms. I know they've changed it. The dictionary of psychiatry is changed often with these terms. So apologies if I'm mixing anything up. But the other type of personality that does have these traits and this kind of disorder can feel empathy in some capacity. They do understand at times what they're doing can be hurting other people. They don't really care. It doesn't really matter to them, or they're using it for their benefit. Whereas the psychopath genuinely is probably the closest you're going to get to somebody who is, born bad, or whatever term you want to use, who just really does not feel that empathy. It doesn't exist. It's not there. So I think it's important that there are different kinds of people, and there are people that are not sociopaths or psychopaths who are using this. They have issues in their past. They have deep insecurity issues. They have ego issues, whatever it is. So it's not that everybody is in the same box. So that's an important distinction too, I think.
This reminds me of what Natalie was saying when we had her on the show. And by the way, if you want to hear that show, you can go to proofoflovecast.com and check out our archives. But she was saying that one of these personality types, narcissists or psychopaths or sociopaths that are kind of low down on the spectrum, and folks, we're not experts on this. I just want to be the first to say that. We might be getting some of this wrong. We're just having a discussion about this here casually. We're not any kind of experts, okay? But some of these people can feel like they can intellectually understand what another person is feeling, but they don't actually feel it themselves. And that's empathy, when you actually feel the same feelings that another person is experiencing. And you can read it on their face, like if they're crying, they look upset, or they look in pain, you can actually feel a little bit of that pain if you have empathy, right? And a narcissist might be able to read the facial expression and say, oh, this person is feeling pain, but they have absolutely no feelings about it themselves. And that's the difference.
Exactly. And I think also, we weren't originally going to go this route, but I don't think that it's exclusive to one particular gender. And I don't know if you guys have seen the show Killing Eve, but it has the first kind of just really, really malignant psychopath character on the show. And there are a lot of little things that you can tell, a lot of, research and assistance with therapists went into her character, and it's a female. And there was a really interesting scene way at the beginning where she's sitting in a coffee shop and she's just looking at a little girl, and the little girl is looking back at her and she's not smiling, and the little girl is not smiling at her. And then suddenly the little girl looks over and she's smiling. So this person looks over to see who she's looking at, and it's the guy who's making the ice cream, giving her a genuine smile, a real genuine smile. The little girl smiling back. This psychopath character sees this immediately and processes, oh, this is what I need to do. And so she plasters this big, creepy smile on her face back at the little girl. The little girl smiles back. and she's satisfied. She acted out that emotion that she was watching somebody else react to get what she wanted. So I think that's really interesting too. If you're seeing somebody who kind of is changing the way they're reacting to you moment to moment, it's probably a good sign you're dealing with somebody like this. So I thought that was an interesting little interjection, just because we tend to, from the past in movies and books and stories, assume that everyone who's doing this is a man. And that's not reality. It really encompasses all genders.
Yeah, that's a great point. Another thing that I've heard about this is that sometimes with art, or with humor, people on the narcissist sociopath spectrum are not really getting it, right? Like they just don't have the same emotional response to something like a joke or a piece of art that's moving as a social person would.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating from the perspective of looking at it when you're not in it. But when you're in it, it's very easy to be manipulated. I wanted to mention that too. I think while it's easy for these people to find a target in someone who maybe doesn't have the most stable background or has had bad experiences with different relationships, it's just as easy as for somebody who's very emotionally healthy to fall under the spell of someone like this, whether it's fast forwarding, future faking, a narcissist, a psychopath. It's why it's often frustrating for family and friends to watch somebody that they know who's so vibrant and healthy and self-aware kind of become sucked into this kind of relationship. So it's something we all really need to look out for, I think.
Well, on that happy note, any final tips and tricks, ladies? Any final thoughts for our poor victim audience?
Sure. I would say just still go with your gut. If something feels innately wrong to you, if you're questioning something over and over and over again, whether it's something small or something really big, just go with that and really follow your gut. Look at what's happening around you. Try as hard as it is, having been the victim of this, most of us probably have in some capacity. It's hard to look around and really take stock logically of what's happening, but the more you can do that, try to do that. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I was going to say something really similar, which is work on developing self-trust and trusting your own intuition. And I know it can be hard sometimes, right? Especially if you've been conditioned to second guess yourself because the people around you didn't trust you in the past. But try to work on finding ways to, verify reality using external data, and also trust your first instinct, because that's often not going to lead you astray. We have a very highly evolved intuitive sense, which we describe as a gut feeling or as an intuition. But this is actually our brain and our nervous system integrating a lot of really complex information and observations and spitting it out as an output that we call a gut feeling or an intuition. And so, listen to that. Try to cultivate your relationship with yourself to the point where you can develop more self-trust. And I think that will help with everything in life.
Awesome. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you like this episode, share it with your friends. And you can also find more episodes on proofoflovecast.com. Thanks again to our sponsor, Voltoro.com. Make sure you go check out their site. And I guess that's it. We'll see you next time. Fridays, Proof of Love. That's when it comes out. So see you next Friday.
Bye.
If you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Show me your heart. I know that it's beating. Tell me that you love me too. So I know your heart is true. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. 'Cause I need some proof of love. Do you like like cryptocurrency, politics, economics, activism, or art? Then check out The Tatiana Show, where you can learn all about it in a fun and non-intimidating way, as if you're just hanging with friends. Go to thetatianashow.com and listen now. Thank you for listening to Proof of Love. Please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Proof of Lovecast. More episodes can be found at proofoflovecast.com. And make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. Proof of Love has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.